This is a very crucial topic and very important for us because the hierarchies on earth, the inner hierarchies of the earth, they are impelling us and they are helping us, mainly in the plane of our monad, of our spirit. This monad, which is us in the monadic level, we should have a development which is inspired and which is impelled by the hierarchies. And all human activity, everything that we do as human beings, can only attain a degree of quality and elevation in the superior way when the bodies in which we are incarnated in touch the energy of that monad. So we need to mentally and at an astral level and etheric level have this contact to feel the touch of this monadic energy, so that we may have an elevated quality of life and development. We can see the hierarchy from different angles in different ways, depending on our comprehension upon this fact, upon this presence here on earth. But in order for us to be in contact with this hierarchy with more freedom and certainty, so that it's not so abstract, we can consider this hierarchy as consciousnesses which have already transcended material evolution. They were individuals, they were evolved and advanced beings, initiated, those who begin here on earth, but it could also be about broader beings who do not come from this planet, but do have their origin in different systems. We are considering as a hierarchy those consciousnesses who have transcended material evolution, either they are in the field of the earth or some other planet or some other system of worlds. And these consciousnesses, in addition to having transcended this material evolution, they are already at the cosmic service. So we can consider a certain hierarchy here on earth. But they are not only serving the earth, they are at a wider service, a cosmic service in which includes the earth. So we have the information or the contact, or we have the consciousness of being in contact with certain hierarchies such as Antwak, Meshuk, Visnuk and others. But those are consciousnesses who develop a cosmic plane in which the work here on earth is included. And these lives, or these consciousnesses, are already consecrated to the central government of cosmos. It's not a consecration like ours, but it's a consecration to the center government of the cosmos. So even if a hierarchy does not have the total conscience of the directions of this government, they have a partial idea. They are only aware of what they should do, but they are a consecrated consciousness to the central government. So when we talk about hierarchies, we are not considering beings that can go backwards or give up or slow their rhythm. But when we say that a being is a hierarchy from this point of view that we are studying, these lives or these consciousnesses are already consecrated in such a way, they are defined in the face of the central government of this cosmos, that through them certain laws are expressed and applied. So the hierarchy, the application of a law, they represent an applied law. So we can contact a hierarchy and they represent a certain law for us, the law that we should know and practice. And from the moment that we know that law through that hierarchy, we live that law, then the hierarchy emanates a new level of that law, a new degree of that law, or a superior law to that one. So the hierarchy would be these laws fully practiced, fully lived. So we can see a hierarchy, we can see the presence of a law in a hierarchy, the practice of a law. We wouldn't be able to contact a higher law which is not known yet if the hierarchy was not present. The way of the hierarchy being present for us is the practice of a law, so we'll be in contact with a law through that love of the hierarchy, through that presence, through that way that they have of reaching us. That's why the hierarchy said that they don't want gratitude, they don't want, because it's not, they are not how we imagine, they are a law, they are law itself. So for you to respond to the hierarchy, for you to answer to this presence, or for you to be grateful to this presence, for this, you must fulfill the law that is being shown to you, that you know, because it represents this law. Law is not something abstract. There is a hierarchy, there is a consciousness, or there is a being who is this law. They became this law, they represent this law. And by having achieved this goal of representing a law, they have the reach of the waves, or they have knowledge, the knowledge of several systems of worlds, several universes of the cosmos. And as these laws are practiced and as this evolves as a law, that consciousness or that hierarchy will enter different worlds or new systems of worlds. So this is something very broad that has several levels. It's something that has a lot of depth in different levels of our beings, depending on how we are open to it and how we are adapted to these impulses or these vibrations. Of course that within certain laws we can only receive as we can, because if we receive too much we will have imbalances. If we receive beyond what we are able to elaborate, it means to transform into life. So it's worth as if you receive an energy that you cannot process and practice it. This is against the law of the hierarchy. So the hierarchy is a knowledge and infinite treasure for us. But it's their law. They will give us what we can bear, because otherwise it will burn and imbalance us. It will disharmonize us instead of helping us to evolve and growing, which is the law. So we have a few hierarchies who are completely hidden for us. It's not that they are hiding. It's because their very presence would burn us, would imbalance us. So they are hidden until the moment you are able to perceive them. So at a certain point you have the possibility of perceiving them, so they are no longer hidden for you. They are not longer occult for you. So what we call as occult, hidden hierarchies, it's for some but not for others. And this takes place according to our capacity of receiving that which is given. This whole structure, this inner structure of beings, of values, of consciousnesses and energies, because a hierarchy could be showing us the more external aspect, so we can see them as a being. But they could be showing us a more internal aspect, so we will perceive them as a consciousness. We will perceive their presence in our consciousnesses, and they will be working within our consciousnesses directly. Or we can perceive them as an energy, and thus we would have to have the structure to absorb that energy, process it, and practice it in the rhythm of energy. What we can understand as hierarchy is in charge of the appearance, of the development of universes, of worlds. So everything that shows up, that appears, that is manifested, the universes, the worlds, the planets, it's all the work of hierarchies, of beings or consciousnesses or hierarchical energies that may be within this vision and may be connected, as it was said in the beginning, and consecrated to this central government of the cosmos, this central intelligence, which we call as government, and which is this flame, the central soul of the whole cosmos. So if some universe should be manifested, some world is manifested, this is the work of certain hierarchies, certain kinds of hierarchies. And then, if something is manifested, there should be a development of spiritual energy, of spiritual forces. There should be a spiritual development at a depth level. And here, other hierarchies take care of the spiritual development. Constructive hierarchies are those that vivify the appearance of creation, and then other hierarchies develop spiritual forces within it. And there is also a different kind of hierarchy, another way of being a hierarchy, which is to guide evolution, inspiring evolution, the evolution of all those beings which are part of this universe or part of these worlds. So the hierarchy is not only here to create and develop spiritually, but also to guide beings, even individually or in groups, towards the path of evolution. And everything that has been described constitutes 7 great hierarchies. Actually, there are other groups of hierarchies. There are 12 groups of hierarchies in this whole manifested universe, in all of its development and in our guidance in the development of all the beings of this universe. We begin to consider the hierarchy for us at the moment that our monads are awakened to this and they begin receiving the help of this hierarchy. So at this level of monad, we as a monad, we are part of 7 hierarchical groups. When a monad awakens, when a monad enters a certain comprehension, a certain experience of laws and the manifestation of certain superior laws, then that monad is part of the hierarchy. So in these 7 known hierarchies in this universe, one of them is our monad. So the group of monads that has already awakened to superior laws in this universe is the 4th hierarchy. And we are so stimulated by the hierarchical energy that at a certain point of the evolutionary process, human monads in group can be and can work within the universe as the 4th hierarchy. So we don't have conditions in the current evolutionary stage of considering those 12 hierarchies, because we are the 4th, and as the 4th hierarchy we would have to have more contact with the others, with the other 6, so that later on we can be more in contact with the others. It's very interesting because on Earth, on this planet, there is the touch of the 7 hierarchies, the 7 known hierarchies, in which we are in the 4th as monads. For us to have this in our lives on Earth very close, for our comprehension and knowledge. And then, as a monadic hierarchy, as this 4th hierarchy, we will contact other hierarchies which work in different systems of worlds, different systems of universe, that work in laws which we are not aware of yet. So we as a monad, we are the 4th hierarchy, but we have 3 kinds of hierarchy beyond our kind, and we have 3 kinds below. So human monads have 3 hierarchies above to contact and develop, and we have 3 hierarchies below us which help us in our development and everything, but in the hierarchical order they are not above. And human monads, the human monads that recognize them as a hierarchy, they have the awareness of this, that they are in a group of creation. All the hierarchies, the 3 above and the 3 below the hierarchy of human monads, are working for the human hierarchy. So the 3 hierarchies above the human hierarchy work in the stimulation and an improvement of the 4th hierarchy. And those which are below, they work for the same being, but in their ego evolution, and even physical level. And these three hierarchies, the seventh is working on the formation, on the development, improvement of our physical part. The sixth hierarchy, which takes place of our is a hierarchy that guides and helps our monad to obtain special atoms in order to have its physical work, its intellectual work, to compose its ego, its personality. Then, above this hierarchy, and here we can find devas, special beings of the Deva kingdom, which take care of this formation. We have the fifth hierarchy, which represents principles of our ego part, our personality, our human group, our intellectual group. So this is a hierarchy that takes care of this. And these hierarchies are below the hierarchy of monads. They work for this hierarchy of monads, but in a constructive way for these monads, constructive for the atoms, and even for the physical part. So human monads have a direct contact with this fifth, sixth, and seventh hierarchy, because these three hierarchies depend existence and development of all its physical, intellectual, and mental part, and ego part. Ego and mental is the same for us, because today the mind is the one coordinating this ego. So there is a hierarchy that works there on these aspects. And by working on these aspects, this hierarchy defines our luminous aspect from our dark aspect, from our negative aspect. So these are hierarchies that work in our subconscious, that work in our unconscious, in which we have a very internal contact, but we wouldn't have a lot of consciousness in the work of these hierarchies, because especially the fifth one deals with negative aspects of our material, and it's good to have it there, and the ego itself wouldn't have to be aware of that work. But the Devic work, some monads are aware of it, and some beings collaborate with those devas very consciously. Well, in that hierarchy of human monads, these hierarchies are directly depending on the third, the second, and the first hierarchy, which are above. And in the spiritual path, we seek some contact with the third, the second, and the first, because their work is to awake in our monads that side which is the superior will, the only will of the cosmos. So our monad does not awaken to the one will by itself. They awake as they are in contact with the first hierarchy. So this first hierarchy will help it develop this will until its will represents. This is the work of the first hierarchy upon us. The work of the second hierarchy is to awake within us as a monad this wisdom, the wisdom of the system in which we are. As our monads are in the solar system, so the second hierarchy is working on our monads, about these monads developing wisdom, so that with will and wisdom, those monads can respond to the central government. And the third hierarchy, which does not take care of formal aspects of the monad, it does not take care of formal aspects of this development, but it influences the monad on the material point of view, an informal point of view, to rise that monad to superior dimensions. On this level that we consider the hierarchy, we wouldn't have names or titles or honor to anyone, because these are groups of hierarchies, groups of beings. This is not only one being, this is not only one consciousness. And this is what this new consciousness is bringing. It brings our monads the knowledge of all this and the very conscious work of all this. So this fourth hierarchy can work with the others as monads in a very conscious way. So this is the new cycle for our monads. This is the new cycle for us in these levels. In the book of Miz Tli Tlan, these things were not said in this way. The hierarchy of Miz Tli Tlan was in charge of this. So what was described just now, you wouldn't find a being, a consciousness there, because this is a group. This is something greater, something wider. So when we talk about a first hierarchy, we're talking about fires. This is a cosmic fire. This is not an individual. The second hierarchy, which brings us wisdom at a monadic level, we can see it as a fire, ether, these cosmic elements, but not as beings or individuals or something that is. Our monads are in contact with this in this way. But there are, on planet Earth, there are the orbits where our souls are, where this fourth hierarchy is developing certain principles. There is a center of Miz Tli Tlan, which has its hierarchy, which is some kind of reflection of this hierarchy that was described. So these 7 hierarchies are represented in Miz Tli Tlan, and the book of Miz Tli Tlan is some kind of bridge as energy for us to begin contacting these hierarchies in Miz Tli Tlan. Because in Miz Tli Tlan they correspond, each one of them corresponds to this. But through Miz Tli Tlan, through this planetary center which has the corresponding hierarchies to their structure, so through this we have some help. So those who work with us, with our monads, it's not this directly, because this would disintegrate us on the level that it would touch us. But through Miz Tli Tlan, through the hierarchy of Miz Tli Tlan, we have, and we saw in the book of Miz Tli Tlan that the first hierarchy of Miz Tli Tlan means at a certain level and proportion this first hierarchy, this first cosmic hierarchy. And in the book of Miz Tli Tlan, it's called as a Munakur. So we have sounds, we have mantras, because a name like this is a mantra. Such a name is not just to identify an individual. This is a mantra sound, and when you pronounce it, or when you have it within you, you receive an impulse, the impulse of that sound, of that mantra, and it will approach this hierarchical energy. The second hierarchy, which is mentioned in the book of Miz Tli Tlan, and which also helps us to be in contact with all this, is Kutuli. And here we are in the phase of great consciousnesses and beings that are closer to our monads. They are closer to our comprehension, our monadic and even human comprehension. The third hierarchy in Miz Tli Tlan, Amach, even closer, because it's a hierarchy that is in charge of healing, a hierarchy that is in charge of certain kinds of information in the field of healing, and we had many reflections of contact with this hierarchy, both in the book of Miz Tli Tlan as in other works which were manifested or materialized through this group. And the fourth hierarchy in Miz Tli Tlan, which is Mayuma, the solar regent, which we received many keys to start to approach and receive this energy. The fifth hierarchy in Miz Tli Tlan is Taikuma, the governors of mirrors. The sixth hierarchy is Ashtadasgram, which we also had enough contact with them in that book, Signs of Contact. And the seventh hierarchy, which is a non-fully revealed hierarchy, because they are dealing with a part of ours which is about the immaterial stimulation. So Oshtimiyuk, which is the seventh hierarchy in Miz Tli Tlan, for us it's one of the hierarchies that are blurry until our material part begins to predominate in our consciousnesses, our beings and lives. So this topic of the hierarchies could be introduced gradually within our consciousnesses, within our energy, and therefore within our lives, through these hierarchies of the planetary centers. And today, we are introducing this topic, but at a certain point, we will have a more deepened study upon certain books, and we'll see the energy of the planetary centers helping us in the to approach these hierarchies. And each planetary center has their hierarchies, and this is all available for monads in this time, in this evolutionary cycle. And this is a very internal topic. It's not a topic that can be shown in graphics beyond what has been represented in the esoteric glossary. But we can live or approach or reflect upon the energy of each book, the content of each book, and recognize these approximations. Here we don't work with the personification of hierarchies, but we can have a mantra name in mind, because this will facilitate us be in attunement with these great inner forces. So this is like an introduction for when we begin studying or reading each book. We can have a prepared environment within us to perceive these things as live and not as news or pieces of information and data, but as life. And these things take a while to be installed within us. It takes a while for our beings to adapt to them. Now at this moment, we have this whole work with the attributes, we have this work with the mantras, and we have this activity of alignment, this activity of concentration with the higher levels through all the works of the choir, that this with time and gradually will help us to form this inner environment within us. So this will all help in the formation of this environment. So when we approach certain books, we will notice that as energy, we will notice it as an essence. And by noticing that as essence, we will notice our broadening. We'll read books in a different way. We'll really be in the face of information in a different way. We have been introduced enough to the work of attributes. I'm referring to the work of attributes when we sing, which is a work that makes us go through many borders, many barriers. So when we sing in attribute, it's a way of opening certain ways to receive the essence of the attribute. So this work with the attributes is very important, so that we can understand the hierarchies, so that we can understand the work of the Creator in a more adult, co-creator way, in collaboration with this great creation. So the attributes have this task. And by using the attributes, by singing the attributes, dedicating ourselves to the attributes, we are forming an environment within us so that we can have a new comprehension of all this. And the mantras also have a role in this work, and the work of the choir, which is to align with all this harmony, all this energy of fourth ray, because the fourth ray and the fourth hierarchy, these are two analog things. The fourth ray, this all forms a group that at a certain point forms a synthesis, and will thus be more prepared as the fourth hierarchy to coexist with the others, but it is in this group of 7 monads and consciousnesses that are more integrated in this creation, in this whole cosmic process. The spiritual center has this energy. The spiritual center brings this path at its monadic level, and we would have, as consciousnesses, to mentally, or with our feelings, to contact these things, so that we are not left behind, so that we're not outside the true work of this center, ignoring what is happening at the hierarchical level with us. So we'll now begin a cycle of more comprehension in the face of the work with these attributes and the work with these mantras and with the choir, because this is about a much greater recognition of these realities.